It's Phil Wade with Dalton Wade Real Estate Group, and today I'm joined with Eric. Hi, Aaron, Bill,
Good morning.
Kinga, and Lisa is holding the phone. So today we're going to talk about, kind of buyer, that sort of initial buyer interaction if you've met them online, and then, getting them, kind of out in some of the objections we've heard people have had. And interesting enough, this week I had a meeting, actually Nicole from Zillow was here in the area, and we got together, and so she gave me some further insight into sort of, the Zillow program. And interesting enough, one of the takeaways, a couple takeaways we'll talk about, but one of them was that Zillow talks about the profile and the reviews and, your past sales and all those things, and you think, oh gee, if I don't have a lot of those, I'm at, a big disadvantage. And you definitely want to work on your profile and make that better. But what was interesting is she said that 85% of the people that click on I guess it's the default click. So what that means is they're not actually clicking on you. They're clicking on contact agent, and whoever the first agent is who gets that lead. So I thought that was very interesting. So you think, and if you actually look, so a lot of times, again, they're not really knowing who they're actually clicking on. They're just clicking. And I know Aaron does Realtor.com leads, and Realtor.com, I mean, it works a little bit differently than Zillow, but it's kind of the same concept in that the Realtor.com leads is where the listing agent hasn't paid Realtor.com. So then there's no agent on that listing, and then the consumer clicks, and then that lead goes to someone else. So in all cases, there's a high propensity for that buyer person clicking to think, oh, I'm contacting the listing agent, right? When in fact, they're contacting someone else. So we've heard that as an objection, are you the listing agent? And so there's some great answers for that, and to really be able to kind of overcome those objections. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about right now. So you need to be prepared for that question, and you have to, you can turn it, turn it right into your advantage. So instead of it being a negative, you can flip it to be a positive. And we'll go through the list, and then I'll talk about one example that happened to me and how it turned out. So the first thing, and again, none of these are in any particular order, but so they're going to ask you, are you the listing agent? That's a question you get. And then the first thing is, you want to be honest and say, no, I'm not the listing agent, but the seller has representation. I'm going to represent you. So I'm going to help you as opposed to the listing agent who's going to help the seller. The other thing, when you deal, when you're the listing agent and then you get that direct buyer, that listing agent is very motivated to sell that person that house because they're going to get, the entire commission. So, it's almost like, they just want you to buy that house because it's much, much more profitable. They don't have to co-broke it. They don't have to share the commission. So they're very, very incented to sell you that house. Tell them that. The other thing sometimes buyers think is, oh, if I deal with a listing agent, I get a better deal, right? There's kind of this preconceived notion out there. Unfortunately, or fortunately, the deal is already predetermined by the listing agreement. So it's not like, you're dealing with the listing agent, and you're going to get some special treatment. No, it's already figured out well in advance or in advance before that listing ever goes live, what their compensation is. So it's not like they can then, give you a better deal. Again, it's just, lack of education out there with people buying real estate. So we need to educate them so we can help them, and so that's another fallacy. One of the things you definitely want to tell them is that the market. The big risk, here's the biggest risk for, for a buyer dealing directly with the listing agent is overpaying, getting taken to the cleaners, not knowing the market. The market. You're going to run the comps for them. You're selling yourself, but it's all true. So again, people can list the house wherever they want. That listing agent, again, is going to be very, motivated, pushy to get that house sold. and they're not looking really out after that buyer's best interest. And again, so I had a story where this was up north. That I went on an listing appointment. The guy had lived there just a year, and he needed to sell the house for like $400,000 to be able to pay off his mortgage. And I walk in, and he had paid like $410, and I walk in and I'm like I was like, there's no way. He was like, so I said, well, didn't you have a buyer's agent? No, I dealt directly with a listing agent, and he got abused. I mean, it ended up being a short sale, unfortunately for him. But again, he probably overpaid $30,000 or $40,000. I mean, he did get a loan, but you can't count that the appraiser. I mean, we've seen examples where you thought, oh gee, this is never going to appraise, and it appraises. So you can't really count on the appraiser to sort of bail you out if you're the buyer. So again, in that case, unfortunately taken advantage of. So you're gonna, the market. You're gonna make sure that doesn't happen. That you're gonna protect them. That they're not gonna overpay, because you're gonna do the research, the work. Where that listing agent, they're not gonna do that because they want to sell that house. They've got that price. So you're gonna know the market, and then you're gonna negotiate hard to get them, to get them the best. To get them the best price. The other thing that's important is that you're going to protect their deposits. We talk about that all the time, right? The financing contingency, the home inspection contingency. There are dates that if time passes and those contingencies evaporate, and the person for one reason or another can't buy the house, doesn't get the loan, they can lose their deposit. So you want to educate the buyer that that's a possibility, and that's not going to happen when they work with you. You're gonna turn them onto your network. So you've got a network of inspectors, lenders. A lot of times people they don't have that. So you're going to make sure that they're not only working with you as a great professional, but they're going to work with other professionals that they need to. That do a good job. So you're going to help them with that. So you're going to help them kind of get through the whole process, and you're going to make that process go smoother, less stress. I mean, buying a house can be stressful enough, but you're going to try to make sure that that's minimized. So it's all going to go very smooth. And then, very important, there's no cost. Tell them that there's not a cost to them. That cost is borne by the seller. So even if you're a buyer's agent, the seller is paying that cost, not them. So you're basically almost free to work with, and you're going to do all this great stuff. And then the last thing you want to ask them is when they're available. You want to end it with, when do you want to go out and look at some properties? It's all, you got to get them from online to offline. And then just kind of, flipping back to when I met with Nicole from Zillow. Zillow actually had done a study in the last little bit where they listened to, because people also call, so you get the clicks and then you get the calls, and probably about a third call. So they listened to a whole bunch of calls, and what they found was a lot of agents low energy, making it almost seem like it was a bother that they got that call, and that's not really the way to start off that relationship. So you want to be like Eric, high energy, pumped up, right? Kind of like, you're happy to hear from them, and you're there to help them. So that was another good tip I got out of her. So, again, a couple things from Nicole at Zillow. Not sure, that buyer, who they're actually clicking on. They're just clicking, contact somebody. You call, you want to, explain to them, who you are and how you're going to help them. And then, take every call, and the same when you're calling somebody that's clicked. Go into it with a good attitude, high energy, how you're going to help them. So let me give one real life example that happened to me. And then we'll turn it over to some questions. So one of the agents was, I think, on vacation, and so the lead came to me. She called, left me a message. I texted her, I called her back, texted her, ended up going out with her that night. and then her boyfriend, fiance, was there, and they're looking around, and obviously I hadn't really met him yet, and then the question came. I got the question: Are you the listing agent? This is a true story. Are you the listing agent? And obviously, as someone fairly experienced, I knew, like, again, I'm ready for that question, and basically I hit him head on. No, I'm not the listing agent, but I'm going to be your buyer's agent. And I took them through the list of things. I'm going to make sure you don't overpay. I'm going to, make sure that your deposits are protected. I'm going to make sure that, you end up working with good professionals, and that the whole process is smoother, less stress-free. And then, would you like to go out on Saturday? I'll pick out some properties, and then they did. We went out the following Saturday, and then one more time out under agreement. So, you've got to sell yourself, because again, you're just meeting them the first time, and how that first time, make sure you're on time, make sure you're dressed well, all that stuff, because you want to make, the best impression, possible. But be ready for that question: Are you the listing agent? It should, I always tell folks, everything you have, you have the advantage. You know what you're doing. They are at, I don't want to say a disadvantage, but like how the process goes, and where you ultimately want it to go to, which is taking them out again. Most times you can't. I mean, again, we can all get lucky. It does happen once in a while, right? You take them out the first time, they go under agreement. But, oftentimes, you're meeting them that first time. Maybe you're looking at, 1, 2, 3 homes, or they just want to look at that one. But then it's, okay, the odds of them actually purchasing that house, right, small. So you got to, in your head, okay, I'm looking for step 2. And step 2 is I'm getting them out again. Usually, if you get them out the second time, you pretty much have a client, and then you kind of go from there. So, awesome. Any questions? All right, Lisa, any questions? Any?
No, somebody just said they saw a stat that said that 70% of people go with the first agent they speak with.
Well, that's a little bit different, but it is actually true. It might even be higher than 70%. And again, it talks to why, if you're like at, a large brokerage, nationally known brokerage, that's not really what people look for. People, as what that person said on the stat, which is true, it's whoever they click with first. Whoever, when they're ready to engage an agent, if you're the one that's there right then and there, and they like you, and you are responsive and follow up to them, you will get their business. They'll become your client. I mean, that nobody, very, very few people go out and say, oh, I'm going to interview a buyer's agent. Again, it's a deficiency, I think, that comes from, I don't know, maybe the National Association of Real, they don't educate the consumer. What does a buyer's agent do? We talked right now about what a buyer's agent does and how a buyer's agent helps that buyer, right? But again, there's no national campaign out there educating the public on why to use a buyer's agent. They just don't think like that for whatever reason. So, so I mean that is a valid, a valid statistic, and that's how it works. So timing is important, right? But if your timing is correct, and we know the Zillow leads convert, it's just again, the public is not all that informed, so they don't really know when you're meeting them at that who exactly you are. So you have to explain that to them, and then kind of like I did, because I knew that question had a possibility of coming. I was ready for it, and I was able to take a hard question, turn it around, and get a client out of it. So, and again, it makes why would someone not use a buyer's agent? It's a no-brainer. Well, why they don't is because they don't know better. They are misinformed. They don't understand what a buyer's agent does. So you've got to, as part of selling yourself, you've got to educate them.
So one time, one client said to me, because I asked, they only wanted to speak to the listing agent, and I said, is there a particular reason why you only want to speak to the listing agent? And she said, I know how your business works. She wanted the listing agent to reduce the price by the 3% that I would get. So she wanted to go to the listing agents and tell him, I'll buy it if blah blah blah. And at that point, I don't know what else to say.
Well, I mean, I think what
She didn't wanted to pay the buyer commission. She wanted that my commission to be reduced from the price.
right. Well, would you know what to say now?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, basically, you know, you would tell them that they're not going to reduce the price because the price that their commission is already determined, right? So it's not like, you know, there's a negotiation. I mean, it's a contractual obligation by the seller to pay, you know, the listing agent usually 6%, right? If they find, sometimes they'll give, you know, 1 or 2% off, but still they're paying more. So, and again, you know, the cost of you.
And the contract is with the broker, not with the agent.
Right.
Right? So they're paying the broker, they're not paying the agent. So then the agent has to go back and renegotiate that contract with the broker, which, how many times does that happen? It doesn't. And so if they put in the contract, it's already in the contract. If I bring you the buyer, I'm only going to take this much, right? That's already in the contract. So, but any transaction is a negotiation, right? So you can always.
But in general, she was just rude and.
Yep.
Well,
I
again,
did
that
not want to deal
might
with
not be
Right.
somebody that you ultimately want to work with. They may
Yes.
not just be the nicest person, but again, sometimes if the person's just, you know, not informed in terms, so, you know, it's educating them. And again, I mean, you know, sometimes, you know, you don't hit it off. That happens for sure. But again, just, you know, be forward in terms of, you know, telling them. Again, the biggest risk is they end up overpaying. So yeah, I saved, you know, $3,000 by dealing directly with the listing agent, but I overpaid $15,000. So did I really save money? No,
Sure.
I lost money. You know, I mean, it kind of like, you know, this again, a story from up north, a little different, but kind of the same concept. Yeah, this guy was selling his house on his own. You know, we had been out with my client. We had looked at, you know, every house in the price range. And then he finds it on Zillow, interesting enough, and he goes, let's go check it out. We did. The guy's $50,000 underpriced. Yeah, he saved $12,500, and you know, he purchased for like $525, and it was probably $575 to $590. Yeah, we gave him a full price offer, done. You know, I got my buyer's commission, he paid that piece of it. Yeah, he saved 2.5%, you know, for the listing agent, but because no one did, yeah, he lost, you know, probably 40 grand because the market was changing, the market was moving up quickly, you know, and he thought he saved money, but he didn't. So it's that same kind of concept, you know, it's you know, you again, that's the biggest risk really for an unrepresented buyer, is that they don't know the market. You know, especially, you know, up in Boston, the houses are much more homogeneous. Here in St. Pete, Florida, generally, you know, it's spotty, right? You're on one street, 2 streets, it's awesome. You go a couple more streets, it's changed. You know, you're here in St. Pete, you know, you're in Kenwood, you know, the houses are X. You cross 34th Street, I mean, it's, you know, going west, it's a nice neighborhood, the homes are very similar, prices drop 100 grand, you know, that, and a lot of people here, you know, are from out of state, you know, they're coming here, you know, because for whatever reason, but, you know, they're not from here, right, they retire, or they like the weather, or what have you, but, you know, so again, just hit them with that, that's their, you know, that's their risk. I mean, their risk is, and you're gonna, you know, you're gonna minimize that risk for them by, you know, doing the CMA. The listing agent's not gonna do that. They're not gonna do a CMA and say, oh, you know, they're gonna. So, you know, it's just smart. Just, you know, being unrepresented, dealing with the listing agent. You know, you do so kind of at your own risk. So, have these, you know, responses in your arsenal. Put it to the people in a nice way. They'll appreciate it, you know, from you, and then hopefully you can, you know, turn them into your client. Because obviously they're out there looking, and again, you can just make the whole process, instead of like, think of it like you gotta like call each listing agent to see that house, where you can get them into, you know, 5 or 6 houses in a few, you know, it's just a much better, smoother, you know, process than, you know, kind of working, you know, by yourself. Cool. Any other questions?
No.
All right, so we're going to sign off, and thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back next week.